Now, Ghosts had some very interesting choices with map design, and Prison Break was one of the biggest maps in the game, and while it was definitely an interesting map to look at and run around on, there was no denying it probably could have been better if they would have just cut it in half and used it as 2 maps. Quick, everybody, what comes to mind when you think the biggest map in Call of Duty history? Comment below. Call of Duty is generally known for smaller maps and a very fast-paced arcade shooter type feel, but that doesn't mean that there haven't been some very big ones. What is up, everybody? Chaos here, and welcome to the channel, specifically the video, 10 biggest maps in COD history. Now, keep in mind, we're only going to be looking at 6v6 maps. No ground war, no 10v10. In order to be eligible for this list today, it has to be playable in normal 6v6. Also, remember that we can't get exact square footage for this stuff, but I'm going to do my best to eyeball it. If that sounds fair enough to you guys, drop a like, make sure you have those notifications turned on. And remember, today's COD history video is powered by Scuf Gaming. If you get anything from Scuf, use promo code Chaos, get yourself some cash back, get your dream controller built, whatever you want. Link is at the top of the description. Now, we're going to start off with Wasteland from Modern Warfare 2, a map that's actually a remake of one of the old school COD maps, which a lot of people don't realize. That explains why it's so big, too. Now, originally, it was called Breckort, but it was tweaked slightly and brought back as Wasteland in Modern Warfare 2 as one of the most polarizing maps in the entire game. If you were using a sniper and you got an early kill streak, well, you probably loved the map. But if you were on the receiving end of that, you probably hated it because it was so massive and wide open. There was nowhere to hide. Kill streaks were insanely powerful here, making nukes very easy as long as you got an early start. Now, personally, I really liked the map, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't huge. It was huge. It was massive. It was crazy, and it's a good way to start off today's video. Next up is Derail in Modern Warfare 2. Raise your hand if you remember the map. It was one of the snowy maps in Modern Warfare 2, and it probably isn't very fondly remembered. It wasn't a bad map, but it was a super slow-paced map, and a lot of Modern Warfare 2 players, they weren't feeling it. The visibility was very open on most of the map since there was minimal cover, unless you were in one of the buildings, in which you could just camp there with a sniper and you'd be fine for most of the game. Derail was a pretty cool map to look at, like most snowy maps are, but the pace was super weird. It was funky. You either couldn't find anybody for the life of you, or you were getting pushed constantly. Now, in terms of square footage, it's one of the biggest maps in Modern Warfare 2, and it's definitely one of the biggest 6v6 maps in COD history. If you're seeing a trend here that old school COD games have bigger maps, well, it's true. Pipeline in COD 4 at number 8. This is one of those maps that you don't really think about when you think of big games, but it's actually huge, mostly because of the big chunks of unused space. Now, some of you may remember that massive dead area in the eastern region up on the hill that pretty much nobody ever stood on as the actual play area. There was a lot of time, there was a lot of high ground. There was actually a lot of low ground too, which makes the map feel even bigger since there were so many different levels. Now, I'm confused, okay, as to where the community stands with Pipeline, because it seems like every single person I've ever talked to about it has a vastly different opinion on the map. They either hate it or they love it. It's like right down the middle. Personally, I liked it, but I totally get why some people didn't. It's definitely a unique kind of map, and in 6v6, it's pretty slow. Now, this next one I have a personal attachment to because I spotted Bigfoot on this map back in the day. Prison Break in Call of Duty Ghosts. Now, Ghosts had some very interesting choices with map design, and Prison Break was one of the biggest maps in the game, and while it was definitely an interesting map to look at and run around on, there was no denying it probably could have been better if they would have just cut it in half and used it as 2 maps. There were 2 distinct sections, the prison and the forest, and both of them were massive. The abundance of areas made it super easy for campers, and a huge size killed the game flow almost immediately after the match started. If you were to get ground war on this map, it would have been a-okay. But in 6v6 maps, it was just slow. It was a campy nightmare, honestly, and you're probably going to see a lot of Infinity Ward maps on this list. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just saying it is what it is. At number 6, Overgrown in COD 4. Now, the sniping in COD 4 was a little weird for a lot of people, but Overgrown is the one map that absolutely everybody sniped on, regardless how good you were. I suck at sniping, but I'll pull out a sniper. I'll pull out an M40A1 on this map. It was the biggest map in the original Modern Warfare, and it was huge. Like a lot of maps on this list, there was a lot of space on this map that was largely unused because of the way the spawns actually worked, which means square footage is a lot higher than people realize. Now, the map was a lot of fun in Ground War, but in 6v6, it was tedious. Now that's not to say it wasn't fun, because this is one of the big maps in COD history that I actually really enjoyed playing on. It was slower paced, but not to a degree that it wasn't fun anymore. So do you think a map like this would translate well to Modern Warfare 2019? I mean, so far, all the remakes in that game have been faster paced ones, but how do you think a slower paced map remake like Overgrown would play out? Now we've reached the top 5, and I love this map. CeeLo and World at War. Did you guys know CeeLo isn't actually in the Wii version of World at War because it was too big for the system to handle? It couldn't process it. Now, I don't think if you actually knew that because nobody played World at War on the Wii, but there you go. Little fact for you. With that being said, this map is huge. Definitely the biggest in World at War, and that's saying something. It takes place on a massive field in the Eastern Front. It's full of tanks, buildings, fields of sight everywhere. You can fight everywhere. War on this map was a blast. Probably the best war map ever made because of how many routes there were to get from place to place, and it was also crazy seeing if you could outrun the dude in the tank. CeeLo was one of the most recognizable maps in World at War, and despite only being a 6v6 map, it actually played okay thanks to the layout in the vehicles, and it's pretty crazy how in Modern Warfare 2019, certain 10v10 maps still feel too slow. But back in World at War, a 6v6 map on a game on the biggest map, it still felt normal. Next up, please don't hate me, Euphrates Bridge. Everybody's favorite bridge map. Maybe not, but whatever. It's one of those maps that's in both the 6v6 and the 10v10 rotation, so it makes it eligible for this list. And I've said a few times, this map seriously needs to be taken out of the 6v6 rotation. I'm right. Anybody who disagrees is wrong. There's no reason it should be here. The map is massive, and it has some janky spawns, and a lot of people don't realize how big it is. There are some huge chunks in the far back corners of the map that nobody ever goes because the spawns are so hard locked away from them, and everybody's always running to the center bridge anyway. Euphrates is huge, and that's kind of what makes the spawns so frustrating. You have all this open space to operate in, to spawn people in, but no, they're hard locked. Now, I feel like I've said this in 5 other videos. How is this not fixed yet? The community wouldn't hate this map nearly as much if the spawns were tweaked. Let's stick with Modern Warfare 2019. Let's go with Grozny Raid. That's right, this map is still 6v6, at least as of the making of this video. Ever since the beta, people have raised eyebrows at why the heck this map is even in the 6v6 rotation, but here it is. Grozny Raid is the biggest map in 6v6, and it's considered by many to be the worst map in the game, even more than Euphrates Bridge. It's huge. It's chock full of buildings, and it's got tons of windows and doors, and the color palette is so bland that you just can't see people. Now, I scratch my head as to why this map is even in this rotation when it's obviously designed to be 10v10. But, hey, you clicked on this list of the biggest maps, and you're gonna get them. Now, interestingly enough, okay, most of these are Infinity Ward. I guess that's because IW tends to be a lot more open to the slowing pace of the game. I don't know, while Treyarch tries to keep things a little faster. At number 2, Fuel in Modern Warfare 2. Raise your hand if you ever played on Fuel. This is a massive map. This is one that everybody hated back in the day and still one of the biggest 6v6 maps of all time. It was a DLC map, and it's the single biggest map in Modern Warfare 2, which, looking back at that, is a game full of really big maps. It's set on an oil refinery in the Middle East, and it featured a huge facility in the middle of the map, but then a whole bunch of empty space surrounding it. I mean, people would run around, they could snipe, they could be sniped, whatever. It was crazy. And there was also a bug on the map that would let you get inside one of the rocks, and then you could shoot out of the rock, but nobody could shoot in. It was kind of crap. It was a crap show. It was definitely gorgeous. It was a pretty map, and considering this game came out in 2010, it was pretty impressive in terms of visuals, but for gameplay and size, it gets the number 2 spot today. And at number 1 today, now that I think about this list, Gustav Cannon probably should have been on here, but anyway, it is what it is. Stonehaven and Ghost. I still stand by my conspiracy theory. The Call of Duty Ghost was supposed to be a 9v9 or 10v10 game by default, but plans changed somewhere into development. So then we were stuck with these massive maps in 6v6. I honestly could have made an entire list of biggest maps with Ghost maps, probably. Stonehaven is one of the most hated maps in COD history, just because of its size. Like Fuel, the map is gorgeous, it's beautiful, and I wouldn't be too opposed to seeing it come back in Modern Warfare 2019 as a ground war map, but this, in 6v6 and most game modes, it was terrible. The massive size, the terrible flow, the wacky spawns, it all contributed to just being a terrible map experience for respawn modes. Now, Search and Destroy, it was different. A lot of people actually liked S&D here because of how high stakes things could be and how many actual routes there were, and I can respect that, but for normal respawn modes, most of the COD community hated Stonehaven because of the size, and as far as I can tell, I could be wrong, but I think it's the biggest map in COD history. You guys let me know if you agree or disagree. Let me know one Gigantor map that didn't make the list that was deserving, and I'll see you soon.